Hi, I'm David, and I'm here to talk to you about cryptocurrency price analysis for Thursday, April 18th, 2019. Today I'll be talking about some of the biggest coins out there in the market: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and Litecoin. Each one's been performing pretty well lately, but each has its own story to tell. We'll go through all of them and talk about what the next few days might bring. So without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe below. Let's get right into it. Alright, here we're looking at Bitcoin, starting on the 4-hour. First off, you can pretty clearly see the channel we've been kind of in since April 1st. We did test up outside of it, but we're mostly looking at between 5,000 and 5,300. Currently testing towards the upside of that right now at about 52.33 here on Coinbase. As you can see, the 50 moving average has formed sort of a middle line between the upper and lower parts of the channel. So if we're rejected at 5,300 here, and it's not clear yet if we're going to be, but if we are, we might catch on that moving average right in the middle, but we also very plausibly could drop down to the bottom of this channel around 5,000. Let's talk about downside first. I don't think the 100 moving average here is going to help us too much. So if we break 5,000, I'm not saying we will. Sentiment's pretty strong. There's no reason to think we're immediately going to break 5,000 at least. We might not even test down to it. But just to cover my bases, if we do, we'll probably get caught up here at around 4,500. We've got the rising 200 moving average here. We've also got, let's go to the daily. We've got the 200 daily moving average, right? Both are around 4,500. So we could drop all the way to 4, but I would be surprised if we fell as fast as we rose here, I guess I would say. So if we do break below 5, which I'm not saying is that likely, we'll probably catch on 45. So now let's talk about everyone's favorite subject, upside. What if we break 5,300? Well, our next target, and you can see I marked it here, is about 5,500. It's where we got stopped out on a recent test above 5,300. And one other thing is I'd like to kind of once more touch on a recurring observation, the 50-week moving average coming down. Those of you who have been paying attention, I've adjusted it from 5,600 to 5,500, both because a couple weeks have passed. The moving average is lowered a little. We didn't quite touch it, but then we did get stopped out at 5,500, so that's my new target for kind of testing on this. Again, I'm not fully bearish. I'm not saying it will reject us, just that it could. You should be aware of it. But if we break through, we're almost certainly, I think, going to test at least to 6,000. Above that, I'm not really going to say where we might go. Let's get to 6,000 first. But if we break 5,500, I'd say we're almost certainly going to hit 6,000. All right, next up, we are talking about Ethereum here on the 4-hour. And right off the bat, you can see that Ethereum, as well as like Bitcoin, has fit into a consolidation channel, kind of a sideways pattern. It's a little bit sloppier, a little bit less well-defined than Bitcoin's, but I would say our targets on the bottom are 160 and on the top 180. That's pretty much where we're in between. Ethereum's been responding a bit more to its moving averages, I dare say, but actually in that vein right now, we're about to have a bearish crossover of the 50 and 100 here. And it looks like the price might be aiming to break upward. It's a little early to say. Pretty good chance by the time you watch this video, it'll have kind of made it more clear. But I'm going to keep it kind of simple. If we break downward, I think we'll hold above around 160. We could test outside of it, but I'm not too worried. And if we go up, we could get stopped out at 180. Kind of like with Bitcoin, if we're about to start seeing more upside action, we might be able to push above that 180. And for that, let's talk about the daily. On the daily, you can see that our next target is clearly 200. It's a good psychological level, and that's where the next resistance really kicks in. Also, if you look here, Ethereum's done a pretty good job. It's not quite a line, but I'll kind of try to draw a line here. It's kind of more like a sloping curve. But ever since November, December, and those lows, yeah, it's not a great line. But you can see that we've hit consistently higher lows and higher highs, and that's, I guess, my point. Again, it seems to be responding more to these moving averages, but it's been performing really solidly. It's climbing, and I think we're going to keep seeing that climb unless something derails it. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. I'd say, I mean, we got some pretty good support under here, but I don't think it's going to even go down that far. I think we'll hold 160 for downside. I think we're going to test up to 180 for upside, and if we're really lucky, we'll push on to 200. So, XRP, I'm not going to talk as much about a sideways channel that it's in because it's been acting a little bit different than some of the other coins, which is why I chose it. We can see the April 1st run-up, but it also has lost most of that value, and it's gotten into more of a bit of a wedge, but we'll get back to that in a moment. It is another coin that is responding pretty heavily to its moving averages on different time scales. And you can see that today has actually been a pretty decent day for the coin. We broke through the 250 moving averages. There's just recently been a bearish reversal here. And now we seem to be getting maybe stopped out on the 100 moving average, and we might kind of be holding in between these two moving averages for a minute. I'm not too concerned about that. I want to talk about the slightly larger pattern we've been seeing with Ripple here. So let's move out to the daily and see Ripple has been in pretty much a tightening wedge for a very long time, well into last year, I would say. So zooming in a little bit, you can see that we're getting to where it's going to have to make a choice, but we have a little bit more room to possibly go sideways. But we're also getting to a point where the moving averages on the daily are starting to align with this tightening wedge. We have the 200 daily on the top end, got the 50 and 100, not quite on the bottom, but providing support. So in combination with the general positive sentiment in the crypto market, we could see some more tightening sideways action, but eventually it's going to break out. I'm leaning towards when it does, it'll break up, just because I don't really see us returning to a larger bearish trend right now. So a longer term, I would say pretty optimistic about it breaking up, but for shorter term, let's focus on like what our immediate targets are. If we do head upwards, we're at least going to test on the top of this channel, and we could get stopped out around, I have it marked at 37. It's really more like 36 to 37, I would say, depending on exactly when we hit. If we break through there, that's great, but the technicals above that are a little hairy, so let's hit that first. And then for downside, I think we'll hold above 31, 32, somewhere around there for testing the lower end of this wedge, which has been a rising support line for a while and has held virtually every time. We might test a little outside of it, like we could touch on 30, but I don't think we'd spend very much time outside of this tightening wedge, on the downside at least. All right, last up, we're going to talk about Litecoin here. Again, starting on the 4-hour. Now, Litecoin is also forming a pretty specific wedge here. Actually, recently, Chepicap reported on an analyst from BitUda that was basically pointing that out, that we have a tightening, descending wedge here that could mean we've run out of steam, could mean that we're losing momentum. But kind of like the Ripple wedge, I'm not necessarily so sure it's definitely going to drop here. Even as I'm actually recording this, you can see that Litecoin here is testing upward. I think a lot of the other coins that I was just talking about are testing towards the upper side of their respective channels right now too. So by the time, again, you see this, things might have changed a little bit. But let's take a closer look. So Litecoin, tightening wedge ever since the April 1st run-up. Not as big as Ripple's wedge, but kind of like Ethereum, we have for a long time now been seeing higher lows and higher highs, more or less. So looks like literally Litecoin's going to test up to the upper end of this channel, basically around $82. It looks like we're like right on the doorstep of that. There was just the reversal of the 50 and 100 moving averages, like some of the other coins. That could we just are pushing through the 50, the 100 that aligns with the top of this wedge could stop us out. I'm not saying we're definitely going to get above 82, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic. If we do push above 82, 85 is realistically our next target. That's where the next resistance kicks in. We'll see if we can get above that. If we do drop, we'll probably just test the bottom of this channel, probably around maybe 78, or there's a chance we break down from the channel and then we might hit down to like 75. I'm not personally worried about too much more downside than that, but we do have the rising moving average here, which would probably touch at about 72. So to simplify it, we're about to test up to the top of the wedge at 82. We push through that, target of 85. We break down below this wedge, target of about 75. All right, that'll about do it for me again. As I always say, this isn't investment advice, this is just my opinion. Go do your own research and make your own decisions. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe. Good luck with your trading.